Well, now that Baldur's Gate has come out fully and everyone agrees it's the best thing since Birthday Fellatio, and with Project Sigil lurking on the horizon, destined to be poorly monetized and about as well received as a surprise back rub from the Babadook, it's worth it to start talking about what the future of Dungeons & Dragons is. And I'd like to start off by saying the future of Dungeons & Dragons is not Baldur's Gate 3. It is not Baldur's Gate style games. That is ridiculous. The game takes up a quarter of your average hard drive size, and it's only a small fraction, the smallest percentage of what all of D&D is. And at the end of the day, as good as Baldur's Gate 3 is, you can't have players jump up on the table and call an NPC a greasy little sausage pervert and have the PC authentically react to it, because that's simply too much to program into a game. So what the hell am I on about? Specifically, I've been thinking a lot about what the future of D&D is, what the future of tabletop gaming is. It's a question I see come up a lot in discussions and think pieces and technological discourse about games and TTRPGs in general, and I always find myself thinking the same thing. I think we are in the future of D&D. Where it goes from here, I'm not quite sure, but I'm pretty sure it doesn't go to the places that people are suggesting. D&D and TTRPGs in general, we've come a long way in the past 10 years. I can vividly remember around the time 5th edition came out, sitting around an analog game of D&D with my friends and discussing how much easier it would be if we could play this all on a series of screens or laptops or even tablets. And now that future's here. Over the past 10 years, we've had dozens of virtual tabletops come out, and each one of them boasts a more immersive, the next generation of tabletop gaming experience. And the upcoming Project Sigil from Wizards of the Coast and Dungeons & Dragons boasts to be the same thing. And to be clear, I've tried out a lot of these systems. Whenever a new immersive, like 3D D&D experience comes out that has the coolest HD maps and you got fully realized 3D character models that you can put in and little tokens and everything, I want to try it out. And I want to test it, and I want to see how it plays, and I want to see how it feels as a dungeon master. And I've been disappointed so many times. And I want to be clear, these systems look great. They look great, the environments are incredible, the figures are really neat, there's some incredible design going into these new virtual tabletop systems. But I always find myself going back to boring old dull as dishwater Roll20. And there's a good reason for that, besides the fact that I already invested a bunch of money in books and assets there. There's a simplicity of vision in Roll20 that I think is part of what always keeps me coming back to it. As basic and dull as Roll20 may seem compared to its more flashy competitors on the surface, underneath it offers a lot of features that simplify and speed up a lot of the more mundane and micromanaging portions of being a dungeon master. There's just so many great tools under the surface in terms of keeping track of characters, large groups of mobs, macros, keeping track of HP, setting quick buttons for attacks. All these things that simplify a lot of the more monotonous or micromanaging portions of being a dungeon master or a game master. And those are good. Perhaps the most frustrating thing is that it's not immediately apparent on the surface of Roll20 that it's capable of doing these things. You kind of have to dig and do some research. It's like piloting a giant ocean liner. There's all kinds of levers and knobs and buttons that you could be utilizing, but if you simply spin the wheel and don't hit anything, you can probably get where you're going. But really, it's this simplicity of vision, it's this ability to simplify the processes and remove a lot of the parts where the players are just waiting for the dungeon master to finish his work that I think Roll20 excels at, and why I believe Roll20 is already the future of D&D and will continue to be the future of D&D until someone finds a way to make that even better. I do not believe the future of D&D is in better visuals. I think that's missing the forest for the trees. It's also where I believe a lot of these other virtual tabletops tend to fall short. They execute incredible visuals, incredible setup, great animations, weather effects, beautiful miniatures in a virtual space, but they miss out on very basic stuff like HP tracking or easy initiative setup or having the tokens clipped to the grid. I'm looking at you, D&D Beyond. And this all gives me pause when I hear information about the upcoming Project Sigil from Dungeons & Dragons and Wizards of the Coast. And of course, keeping in mind I have no first-hand knowledge of this, I recently signed up for the beta to try and get some information, but I haven't received any info back, and I really want to talk about this, so sight unseen. Take it with a grain of salt. But as I watch the development of Sigil unfold, I notice a bit of a pattern. An emphasis on grand, elaborate visuals, beautiful tokens given out as special offers, special tokens for Baldur's Gate 3, as if you would ever use them. I'm just gonna harp on this. I can't fathom a reason why you would ever use special Baldur's Gate 3 character tokens. I don't know the player that shows up to my D&D table and is like, I made Astarion. I'm gonna use my Astarion mini and play Astarion. Players want to make their own characters. How do you not know this? The developers of Baldur's Gate could have told you that. They have the goddamn numbers. And then there's things like a planned release on consoles, integration on every possible platform that they could distribute this thing out. And it all starts to feel, for lack of a better word, very video gamey. I've always firmly believed that there's only so far you can develop a virtual tabletop before it starts to become a video game. And it's somewhere between Roll20 and Baldur's Gate 3. I'm not sure exactly where it lands, but the closer you get to one end, the more you become a video game. And a lot is lost in that journey. Let's keep in mind that Baldur's Gate 3 only works because it takes the smallest sliver of the D&D experience and translates that into a video game. They had to limit character classes, they had to limit character subclasses, they had to limit spells, they had to limit abilities, and they had to limit the scope of the space you were allowed to enter and explore. Baldur's Gate 3 only takes place in a small area around Baldur's Gate, a little bit of the Underdark, and 2 of the many districts of Baldur's Gate. And all of those were shrunk down to fit into it as well. And this is to no way diminish what Baldur's Gate 3 accomplished. It is the best representation of Dungeons & Dragons in a video game that we have gotten to date, and will likely stand as the gold standard of adapting a TTRPG to a video game for probably another decade or so. But you simply can't argue that if Baldur's Gate 3 is your only experience with Dungeons & Dragons, you're missing out on a lot. When you have a game that allows for anything to happen, something must be sacrificed in the journey to fit it in the rigid confines of a video game. You cannot make a video game where anything can happen. It simply can't be done. Not with current technology anyways. And let's take it a few backs to kind of illustrate my point here. Say I'm building a map. Say I build this map in a beautiful immersive 3D environment and allow my players to walk in and experience the map as part of an encounter. Now normally I would describe the environment that the players are entering. I would give little details and little flavors and all these kinds of things. However, now the players can see the environment in its totality. So I am simply describing what they can see on the page or in the environment that they're in. I can add additional effects for like smell and sound and like atmosphere, but by and large they see what they're entering and their eyes are going to override anything that I say to them. So if I want to add anything additionally, say there is a secret passageway or something that doesn't mesh with how the map appears visually, I have a steeper hill to climb to suspend the player's disbelief with a more detailed map than I do with a less detailed map. And this may seem like a little thing, but D&D is full of these little experiences, and more of them are sacrificed on the journey that turns Dungeons & Dragons into a video game. And look, don't get me wrong, I love video games, but they're a different experience than what Dungeons & Dragons is. And this is where I feel a lot of companies lose the plot when it comes to developing a virtual tabletop, and where I expect to be disappointed whenever Project Sigil finally comes to fruition. A virtual tabletop should not be developed like you would develop a video game. You should develop it like you would develop a video game adaptation of like a board game, something that simplifies the finicky little fiddling around with pieces and shuffling of money and setup and tear down of the game, and allows that to open up to a virtual space where more players can access it more easily. I can run Roll20 on 3 potatoes and an alarm clock. On too many occasions, I have brushed up against virtual tabletops that my players couldn't run on their computers. Most people who are not hardcore gamers do not have powerful PCs. Some of them barely have laptops. You're probably watching this video on a goddamn phone. So when you build your fully immersive 4K virtual reality 3D experience with animated avatars and beautifully rendered tokens and figures, you are limiting your players. You are limiting the number of people who can access and enjoy D&D because of hardware. A vast majority of casual D&D games are played on a basic-ass playmat with dry erase markers drawing out the map, and maybe a couple of cardboard tokens, or some expensive minifigs that were bought at the same shop that the game is being played in. And the simplicity of that experience directly translates to what is being offered with Roll20, but with the added bonus that you don't have to get everybody into the same room at the same time to be able to play it. And a lot of the time, that's all it needs to be. Look, I love elaborate set pieces. I watched on in awe whenever PAX went on and they brought out this big, beautifully modeled set that the players would have to sit in for an entire D&D session. I have long dreamed of getting a few $1,000s to spare to spend on a giant dwarven forge dungeon setup that I could use for my players in home games. But at the end of the day, these are set pieces. They're window dressing. They're a beautiful centerpiece at the middle of a giant Thanksgiving dinner, there to be seen and enjoyed and possibly thrown out in a few weeks or at the end of the dinner. And they become less worth it when I have to sacrifice other parts of the D&D experience to have them. So yeah, I think a lot of companies need to sort out their priorities when it comes to developing new virtual tabletops. And I don't think we'll see the future of D&D, massive finger quotes, whatever it might be, until they're able to sort out how to keep the accessibility and the elegance of simplicity that comes from Roll20 into a grander and perhaps more accessible system. Honestly, I think Dungeons & Dragons and Wizards of the Coast should have saved the giant pile of money they spent developing Project Sigil and just made some kind of integration agreement that allowed D&D Beyond to integrate with other virtual tabletops. They would have kept the subscription fees, and then it would have integrated with all the virtual tabletops. People wouldn't have had to buy books over again. I don't know, you didn't come here for a business lesson. My point is, as old man yells at cloud as it might sound, I think the future of D&D for now is going to remain with TTRPG systems like Roll20. Systems that can reliably provide the simple experience of gathering around a table with a playmat and whiteboard markers to as many people as possible. And look, Roll20 is not sponsoring anything here. I mean, look at my channel. Why the hell did they knock on my door? I'm not crazy about a couple things on Roll20, like the map making system is insane. It feels like assembling Legos with your elbows. That's why I tend to try to import all my maps into Roll20. But at the end of the day, it provides players with the same experience that I could give them if I was sitting at a table with them, but a bit more streamlined, with maybe a couple extra features for a big battle. And at the end of the day, that's what these virtual tabletops need to be. That's the future of D&D as we see it. The books, look, I'll talk about the books eventually. If you really want me to talk about the books, say in the comments, and I'll get the books and talk about them. Besides that, I just wanted to talk about virtual tabletops, the future of D&D, how I feel about it, and what we lose in the journey to turning D&D into a video game. Thank you all for watching. Remember to do the like, the comment, and subscribe. I'm trying to get to 500 subscribers. And, well, till the next video, puck out.